Hello and welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let us begin with the headlines. President Park Geun-hye is off to Washington for the Nuclear Security Summit. Even before the main event, she will be holding one-on-ones with her American, Chinese, and Japanese counterparts, focusing on measures against North Korea. General election voting begins now for Koreans living abroad. More than 190 polling stations are standing ready in 113 countries outside of Korea. Other than kill chain and the COMD system, the highlight of South Korea's 5-year military buildup plan is ground-to-ground GPS-guided munitions to counter Pyongyang's multiple launch rocket systems. President Park Geun-hye is off to take part in the 4th and last Nuclear Security Summit in Washington. She'll be busier than ever with a series of sideline summits in which she'll seek support to pressure North Korea. Song Ji-sun starts us off.
President Park Geun-hye embarked on an 8-day trip to Washington and Mexico City on Wednesday. When she lands in the U.S. Capitol, she will have a busy day ahead of her on Thursday, starting off with summit talks with U.S. President Barack Obama. Trilateral talks with Obama and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will follow, with all three leaders discussing countermeasures and sanctions on North Korea's nuclear aggression. After that, President Park and Abe will hold a one-on-one session. President Park is set to then meet Chinese President Xi Jinping for an in-depth conversation on North Korea. At a plenary session of the Nuclear Security Summit on Friday, 50-plus state representatives will assess their achievements since the last summit in 2014 and adopt a joint communique for increased nuclear security. President Park's focus will shift to business when she jets off to Mexico City on Saturday, flanked by a delegation of 145 South Korean businessmen. Seoul is seeking to expand its presence in Mexico's infrastructure and development projects and lock down greater business opportunities through the Korea-Mexico Business Forum and direct consultations with Mexican buyers. Before flying home, President Park will invite Korean residents in Mexico to a dinner. A cultural event promoting the Korean Wave, or Hallyu, is also on her schedule. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
2 weeks before Koreans head to the polls to pick new parliament members, the three main parties iron out details for their campaigns. Kim Young-gil has more on the last-minute fine-tuning efforts.
The ruling Saenuri Party's chairman Kim Moo-sung on Wednesday outlined the party's strategy for winning victory in the upcoming April 13th general election.
The Saenuri Party will revive Korea's economy, resolve the job shortage, and work towards minimizing wealth polarization through well-made policies.
Kim said the party will encourage companies to expand their investments, reform the rigid labor market to create jobs, and provide financial support to private businesses with good growth potential. The main opposition Minju Party of Korea's interim leader Kim Jong-un said he would give the most support to candidates who plan to forge alliances with their minor opposition party counterparts to field a single candidate in districts where more than one opposition candidate is running.
In order for the opposition to win more seats than the conservatives, we need the people's support. People want us to forge alliances in certain districts to avoid splitting the liberal vote.
Without such alliances, the party believes it could suffer a major setback in the capital region and other metropolitan areas where multiple opposition candidates are competing against each other and someone from the Saenuri Party. Meanwhile, minor opposition People's Party co-leader An Chol-soo attended a ceremony at the National Assembly to thank and encourage the candidates who are representing the party in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do Province.
Through this election, we will open an era of a multi-party system in Korea. We will give back intrinsic rights to the people and put an end to the two-party system that has monopolized our political landscape for so many years.
And also said the party is aiming to win 10 seats in the region and 40 seats in all nationwide. It needs to secure at least 20 seats to form a negotiation bloc within the National Assembly. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Outside of this nation, Koreans around the world have already begun casting their ballots for the April 13th general election. Over 150,000 overseas Koreans have registered to exercise their democratic rights. Park Ji-won has more.
Overseas voting for this year's general election began at Korea's consulate in Auckland, New Zealand at 4 a.m. Korea time on Wednesday. Voting will continue through the end of next Monday at 198 polling stations in 113 countries around the world. Korea's National Election Commission says almost 155,000 people, or nearly 8% of some 2 million eligible citizens living abroad, have registered to vote. Nearly 25% of the registered voters are in the U.S., 19% are in Japan, and 14% in China. Koreans will be able to cast their ballots between 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day during the 6-day vote period, and that includes weekends. Registered voters are required to carry a valid ID with a photo, such as a passport or a resident registration card, and can vote in any country where voting stations are available. Those who have secured permanent residence in other countries need to additionally bring their certificates to prove their resident status. Overseas voters with resident status in Korea can cast their ballots for both local constituencies and proportional seats, but those who have not maintained their resident status in Korea can only vote for proportional seats. 박지원, Arirang News.
According to the U.S., an advanced missile defense system in the peninsula could be the only answer to North Korea's continued aggressive behavior. Washington also wants China to use its unique position to tighten the screw on its longtime ally. For details, let's turn to Hwang Ho-jun.
A senior U.S. diplomat said the missile defense system known as THAAD is necessary to protect U.S. interests and its regional allies from North Korea. Speaking at the Brookings Institution in Washington on Tuesday, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken said deployment of the THAAD system would put real pressure on North Korea to denuclearize. He also called for China's cooperation on the matter and said Beijing should use its unique relationship with the North to nudge the regime in the right direction. Otherwise, it will have to accept that Seoul and Washington need an extra layer of security against Pyongyang's threats.
We've encouraged China to contribute more, to apply its significant capabilities as a rising economic and political power to help meet the needs in the international community, from peacekeeping to public health.
The remarks come ahead of Chinese President Xi Jinping's trip to Washington for a nuclear security summit on Thursday, where North Korea is expected to be high on the agenda. China is against THAAD deployment to South Korea, as the radar has a range that extends into Chinese territory. Blinken emphasized that the system is not directed against China and said that Washington is ready to brief Beijing on the technical specifications at any time. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
North Korea seems to be using its two-track policy of nuclear and economic development to consolidate the regime ahead of a Rail Workers' Party Congress this spring. Connie Kim has more on the Pyongyang policy.
When North Korea holds its Rare Workers' Party Congress later this spring, its leader will be seeking to consolidate the regime. Seoul's Unification Ministry says that to achieve its goals, Kim Jong-un appears to be escalating his Pyongyang policy, representing the dual aims of developing nuclear weapons and boosting the economy.
There's a high possibility that it's to rally domestic support. Also, with the party congress coming up, it will be an effective tool in getting people to work harder for campaigns like the 70-day battle.
The Pyongyang policy was adopted by the North's young leader in 2013 during a plenary session of the Workers' Party's Central Committee. The North's propaganda outlet Today of Chosun said Wednesday the Pyongyang policy is what will bring about a victory in the battle against the United States. The North's daily Dodong Sinmun also mentioned the importance of the TwoTrack policy recently, when it hinted at the possibility of a second arduous march, a propaganda campaign launched in the 1990s encouraging citizens to overcome the famine. The military component of the Pyongyang policy is evident in the North's frequent provocations since its fourth nuclear test in January. This month alone, North Korea has fired off short and mid-range missiles in 5 separate instances, with its recent missile firing aimed at testing the accuracy of a newly developed multiple rocket launcher. Roughly 3,000 people are expected to participate in the Congress that's forecast to start on May 7th and run for between 3 and 5 days. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea has unveiled its 5-year, multi-billion-dollar defense plan to boost its military readiness against the increasing threats from Pyongyang. Our Kim Hyun-bin tells us what's in the works.
South Korea's defense ministry on Wednesday unveiled its 5-year defense plan for 2017 through 2021, worth $192 billion, which represents a 5% increase over the previous plan.
The main focus of the defense build-up plan is to make ourselves better able to adapt to the changing defense environment and enhance our independent defense capabilities.
During the 5-year period, South Korea will aim to implement the air defense and interception system known as Kill Chain and Korean Air and Missile Defense. Korea plans to complete installation of the systems by the mid-2020s, before Seoul retakes wartime operational control of Allied forces from Washington. South Korea also plans to develop ground-to-ground GPS-guided munitions to counter Pyongyang's multiple launch rocket system. The defense ministry said the system is the most imminent security threat to South Korea from the north, as there is no way to counter the weaponry at this point. North Korea recently test-launched several rounds from its newly developed 300mm multiple rocket launcher, which has a range of up to 200 kilometers and can target half of the South Korean peninsula when fired from the border.
Ground-to-ground munitions are very precise. They will neutralize hidden enemy equipment with their bunker-busting abilities. It will have a strong effect.
The ground-to-ground counter-artillery guided munitions have a range of 120 kilometers. The South Korean military is set to finish development by 2018, and the weapon will be deployed by 2019. The 5-year plan also includes the introduction of an anti-ballistic early warning radar system and carbon fiber bombs that can black out North Korea's electricity supply. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories, South Korea's top central banker says there is a possibility the economy could fail to grow 3% this year. According to the Bank of Korea chief Lee Ju-yeol, slumping exports in the first 2 months of this year and sluggish domestic demand have slowed growth in the first quarter more than the central bank had expected earlier this year. It's the first time Lee actually admitted that Korea might fail to reach a 3% growth this year. The BOK will release its new growth outlook next month. Its current forecast laid out in January stands at 3%, down 0.2 percentage points from its earlier outlook in October last year. U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen insists the central bank move cautiously when it comes to further rate hikes. Park Jong-hong shares with us her remark consistent with the Fed's previous position revealed in mid-March.
Federal Reserve Chief Janet Yellen has reiterated caution in hiking U.S. rates. Giving a speech at the Economic Club of New York on Tuesday, Yellen said it was appropriate to adjust the rate policy carefully, as inflation has not yet proven durable against the backdrop of global risks to the U.S. economy.
Given the risk to the outlook, I consider it appropriate for the committee to proceed cautiously in adjusting policy.
Her remarks come 2 weeks after the Fed decided to hold benchmark interest rates steady. At its March policy meeting, the U.S. Central Bank had pointed to an overseas slowdown and early-year market turmoil as reasons for the pause. On Tuesday, Yellen said the risks of premature rate hikes and derailing growth outweigh the hazards of needing to catch up to a stronger-than-expected economy. She added that the Fed still expected headwinds, such as weak growth overseas and low oil prices, to subside slightly and allow the recovery to continue. Meanwhile, the Fed chief called economic reports this year, quote, somewhat mixed, noting that strength in the U.S. labor market, consumer spending, and housing had offset a sluggish global economy and depressed crude prices. The decent U.S. economic data had prompted some other Fed officials to suggest another rate hike could be possible in April or June. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
Now let's turn to some positive numbers for a change. Samsung Electronics ranks the 3rd most reputable company in the world following Amazon and Hallmark. According to a survey conducted by the American consulting firm Reputation Institute, Samsung attained a total score of 84.4, around 7 points higher than last year. Samsung improved in all 7 criteria of the survey, especially in innovation. Meanwhile, Samsung's arch-rival Apple stayed below the top 100, though it scored 2 points higher than last year. The biomedical industry is one of the sectors the Korean government sees as having great potential for growth in the coming years. So it's no coincidence Seoul is hosting one of the world's largest events in the sector. Kim Ji-yeon takes us to BioKorea 2016.
Asia's largest bio-industry event, BioKorea 2016, opened in Seoul on Wednesday. Some 250 companies and around 23,000 industry officials from around 45 countries are participating in the event's business forums and exhibitions. The annual event, now in its 11th year, is a place where local and foreign businesses can come together to trade information on tech transfers, investment, and exports. During the opening ceremony, Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-ahn said the event is a great way to highlight the potential of Korea's advanced biomedical industry. The government is aiming to turn the country into one of the world's top 7 biomedical leaders by 2020. And to do that, it will establish a special committee tasked with finding ways to foster the sector.
Due to the rising demand for better healthcare services in the face of the rapidly aging society and the spread of the Zika virus, the biohealthcare sector is increasingly becoming a high-value industry. As of now, the volume of the global biohealthcare market is estimated at $7.2 trillion.
Some of the most popular attractions at BioKorea are related to the digital healthcare sector, which uses information and communication technologies to address health problems. For example, the Korea-based startup Redox Tech has developed biosensors that can help in detecting early signs of dementia.
The device is an improvement on the current method of analyzing large amounts of glucose in the blood, since it narrows the margin of error. The wet ECL biosensor only needs a small amount of diluted bodily fluids to perform an analysis.
Another major attraction is the job fair, which aims to match companies and potential new recruits. Anyone can register to participate in the event that runs through Friday. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
That's all from us at this hour. Thank you for watching.